Welcome to Chef's Academy. I am Chef Romain Avril and today I'm sitting with Chef Eric Robertson, the co-executive chef at one of the top venues in Canada, restaurant Pearl Morissette, situated in a beautiful Niagara region. Chef Robertson brings a love for terroir and locally sourced ingredients. Strong from years of experience in the Michelin world, both in France and Belgium, he then returned to Ontario to gain more experience at Langdon Hall, one of Canada's only 5-diamond relay chateaux. Chef Eric is known to craft some of the most beautiful meals here at RPM with his co-chef and friend Daniel Adida. Given where we found ourselves today, it is only natural that Chef Eric teaches us about the art of creating a menu around the terroir, the beautiful and unique flavors around here in Ontario, the wilderness, and of course here in the Pearl Morissette's garden just behind us. So Chef Eric, can you explain to our community what the terroir means and how important a 100-kilometer menu is to you?
For me, it's one of the pillars of what we do here. Like it's what I've kind of grown up in a lot of the kitchens that I worked in, and what I was exposed to overseas was you had these restaurants that were exceptional and these restaurants that were worth the drive, and you know, I was flying across the world to go work at, and the reason why they were exceptional was because they were unique to that region. And that's why I found myself overseas, and Daniel found himself overseas as well too. And so for us, that was always, you know, one thing that maybe not a chip on the shoulder coming back to Canada, but it's one thing that we wanted to expose guests, the staff to, and even ourselves to really try to create like a regional focused menu and restaurant in a part of the world that has usually adopted other cuisines. Yeah. And so for me it was, and then also just being able to work with products that are just right outside your door or come in fresh is the way that it makes my life easier. And so that was really what makes it important to me.
Now, it's not always easy for chefs in a city to get gorgeous produce like we have around here at Pearl Morissette. So what would be your advice to kind of like bring the wild into the city?
I think there is a lot of resources out there. I think that a lot of it comes down to the want of the chef. You know, we can be bullheaded on a lot of different other topics and things that we find are must-have for a restaurant or must important. We source things to find the ingredients that we have here in Niagara. In Toronto, I think sometimes it comes down to the chef and the desire. Like even here, being situated out here, I still drive to go get some of the ingredients that we work with, and drive long distances to go pick up the best watermelons that I can find, or the best corn, or the best tomatoes from different farmers as well too. Just and even for our own seafood that we have to go pick up ourselves from the airport is, you know, it's one thing that we've kind of built our restaurant brand around, you know, and with that as well too, it's like I wouldn't trade that for anything, like for any of the ease there. There's a lot of different markets in Toronto as well too. Finding the time, making that part of your schedule to go in, like part of your work hours, to go and talk with these vendors is how you build these connections, how you build communities, and maybe they can drop off at your front door if on their way into Toronto. You can build that if you just say to them, I'm going to take all your onions or all your beautiful garlic, and they can drop off at your door. Like that's kind of the way that we approach a lot of our relationships with different farmers, and that has, you know, it's done well for us in that sense of being able to just have these great people to talk to and bounce ideas off of and hear their feedback and learn and continue to grow as a you know, hospitality and food professional. It's like you don't get a better experience than talking with the person who's growing it, either from Shane in the garden here, but also from just a different network of farms that we work with. And then also just creating that community as well too within different restaurants where, hey, I can reach out and, do you use this supplier? If not, like, you know, you should check out this, like come by and taste one of the dishes I'm doing with it, and just expose people to new ingredients, like Affinity Fish in Toronto, where they're bringing in these beautiful fish from Lake Huron, and they're fish that no one, like we're using burbot next week on the menu, and that's a fish that no one really works with, but it's we're able to try that and expose either guests or different chefs that are coming into the restaurant to those ingredients. And like once you create that community, there's more of a demand for it, and it's
Well, and then to kind of like talk more on that, I mean, I remember when I had the restaurant, R&D is a little bit more than just creating a dish and finding plates. I think there's a big part of it is meeting the farmers, and I think it's not just a chef. I used to take time out of the week so we can actually organize also trips with the staff. Take them to Linton pasture and go see the pigs. You know what I mean? And gonna see the beef farm, or like or even the produces, right? So like go to tamarack farms, and you know, like, so I think once you also embed into the cooks as well that, hey, I've always told them, listen, before you cook that piece of protein, like, you need to know the story behind it, right? So I think it takes a lot from us in the city to take a car, minivan, and go and meet chefs, either like yourself at Pearl Morissette, but also to kind of like visit the farmers and try to understand like our network, because it's around us, it's so close to us, but it will take maybe a little drive.
And with that as well too, you can also create the community from within the restaurant. So Affinity Fish is run by John Clipp and Matt Taylor. Matt Taylor worked here for a couple of years as well too. And we used to do projects on every week of like, what's something you want to do, want to talk about. And he was talking about doing how he wanted to build a system where people were ikejime slaughtering fish. Well, fast forward a couple of years, he has a shop now in Toronto that's selling to us ikejime lake trout. And just the culture of like a Japanese approach to the way they handle fish is something that he was passionate about working here, and being exposed to the ingredients that we had, a more ingredient focused cuisine. And then he goes and does that, and we're buying fish from him. Or in St. Catharines, there's a new butcher shop that's going to be opening up soon. There's a former sous chef from here, and it's King Street Pantry, and he's using all the same suppliers. So Jeff Linton is selling him pork, Tamarack Farms is selling him ducks, YU Ranch is selling him beef. There is that gap in the market where you want, or there's a need for pasture-raised animals, or animals that benefit the environment that they're raised on. And there's people that want to buy that. I want to buy that, and I have a hard time finding that for my own family at home. And so we have these kind of shops popping up, and it's up to chefs to support those. Support those businesses.
We do have to buy the products. And
if we are that skilled in our craft, we should be able to make something good out of that. We can make a raw onion, it's not that good. We can try something with a different ingredient, then manipulate it to make it delicious. That's kind of our responsibility.
So you and Chef Adida have a very ingredient-forward cuisine. We kind of just talked about it. So the work is done by subliming the vegetables, the local protein, through techniques, whether it's fermentation or pickling or anything like that. For example, I believe you don't use lemon here at Pearl Morissette. It seems to be something that we call lazy. So can you walk us through the process of the R&D of Pearl Morissette and you too?
I wish there was more of an R&D, and I'm sure some of the staff would wish there was more of an R&D process to some of the dishes, but it's more kind of comes from just the pantry that we have here. I was touring a friend around the garden here and talking about like the limitations that we set for ourselves here, not using lemons, the limitations that we have on the way that we source ingredients. And he's like, stop saying limitations. There's more in this garden than there is in any restaurant's pantry or any sort of freshie that a lot of restaurants are able to get. And so when you think of it that way, we just don't lean towards those ingredients. Man, I love using lemons at home. I'd use them crazy, but I find it more interesting to use something like a lemon geranium or orange thyme from the garden, or lemon verbena, like those things to kind of fill those gaps. But then we're able to, with that, it kind of spurs on that. It's like a catalyst or a jump off point for the next dish, is that how we're able to find something new. Or Deirdre comes into the kitchen with, hey, this is a wild ingredient, like one that we use is prickly ash berries. So they're wild berry from around the area here. They're actually in the citrus family. They're only native citrus to North America, and they're in Japan they call them sencho. And so like green sencho berries, but we use them as prickly ash, and it brings this like Szechuan peppercorn kind of citrusy numbingness to the mouth. And it's just like, that's a really thing, and that spurs into sweet, savory, all these different dishes that we can mess around with, and it comes from just a new ingredient coming in that's a Canadian or local ingredient. You can build a menu off of that for 6 years now. Yeah,
and I feel like for the lemon, I think what we see as a lemon usually is to bring balance and acidity, but I'm leaning towards vinegar a lot more. And if you look at my menu, it's built, and all my stuff, it's always make fun of me, but it's always like pickle, 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 because there's so many ways to use vinegars, which are used for fermentation, something that we can do locally here without importing, right? So it's also sometimes, again, going back to the research and try to think a little further than just like, because lemon is so common to acidity, this is the first thing we have when we have so many resources available to us.
Yeah, and it's not, the way that we approach dishes here is like I always work for deliciousness first,
yes,
and then work backwards from there. And like, you know, and so we just you have like your kind of 3-4 blocks of the flavors and the way they combined, and then what I'll try to do is like use like a little bit of a twist on it. We joke about that, Dan and I in the kitchen, is like it needs a twist. And that's really where those pantry items come in that are they're unique to because we grow them here, but they're not unique. Like we just buy seeds. Everyone can do that, or like a lot of people can do that, but it's just kind of challenging yourself to get those ingredients in the door, trial and error, and accepting when things aren't that good. There's a lot of things that don't make it on the menu here. They happen on a Thursday night, and they only happen for maybe one dish, and then I try it with the wine team and with the different kitchen teams and stuff, and then we quickly change that as guests are walking in through the door, and then it goes from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So as we know, the Michelin Guide has arrived in Toronto last year. We are about just coming on a year. So we know that in France and the US, a new kind of star has emerged, the green stars, promoting a lower carbon footprint and putting forward sustainability. Hoping they may one day come to Canada, how does a chef in a city who don't have the beautiful land that we have behind us can prepare himself or herself so they can kind of like go after those stars, in your opinion?
I think that I don't necessarily know enough about what the criteria is for the Green Star. I hope it's not just an opinion. I hope there is something that is a little bit more in-depth there to show that, because, you know, as I was touring around here, I was talking about, I feel like there is a lot of smoke and mirrors or greenwashing in the restaurant industry. But, you know, I think if I was, you know, I think that there's a lot of things that are low-hanging fruit for chefs but I don't know how, I think a lot of things that chefs can implement are not really things that a Michelin guide would see, like, you know, the use of cling film, saran wrap, CO2 cartridges, which are pretty bad, they're terrible for the environment, compressed gas like that. Using things like just whipping it by hand is an easy step to avoid that, and it's just, you know, and once you just move those things out of your kitchen, you don't even think about them anymore. And then the other one is just, you know, doing the work to connect with these different local suppliers. Like, challenge yourself. If it's only one dish on your menu, challenge yourself to have one dish that's only local ingredients. You know, challenge yourself to visit one farm a month. Everyone's strapped for time. There's not enough time. There always isn't. But the world is such a small place now with social media and the internet and every way to connect with people. You can reach out to these people, or shoot me an email, shoot me a message. I can help facilitate meetings with different farmers that we use or different suppliers that we use here. But that's not saying that we would get a Green Star or anything like that, but I just think that there can be more done from the chefs leading the charge in that sense. And then there's a lot of great suppliers, and being creative with the way that you can, you know, because everyone's under the deadlines or under the gun of food costs and labor costs and a lot of things like that, but you know, finding a way that you can work around that, you know, make something that's just very delicious with something local, and I don't think you'll need to have ingredients from Hokkaido on your menu.
Furthermore to that, something I try to do as much as I can is to use the most of the ingredients, avoiding waste at all costs. I did a celery dish not that long ago using 7 techniques, 7 textures really, and 7 flavors, coming at only 1 vegetable. So can you explain to your community how you apply this concept here at RPM? Because I know you do that too. What are some out of the ordinary pairing that you've made?
We do a lot. It's one thing that we just always challenge all the cooks here. Sometimes it can get a little bit fatiguing as well too, because a cook will be standing with like onion peels and looking at me like, how can I use these? And just say, okay, those ones can go into the compost, because we end up having too many of these little projects going on. But the ones that the ones that we use quite often on the menu is we make a pate from scallop roe. So the orange roe on the side of the scallop, we take that and we treat it like a chicken liver, and we make a pate from that, and we serve that with crudité from the vegetable garden, and that's one. We take our bread and we soak it overnight as well too. Our leftover sourdough bread, we'll soak that overnight, sometimes over 2 nights, and what we'll do is we'll strain off that liquid and it'll be like this very yeasty kind of caramelized flavor. And we'll reduce it down, and we'll use that as a base for vegetarian sauces that kind of has that like very nice caramelized flavor to it. Oh, and then we'll take the leftover bread from that, and we'll start making bread misos with that, which has this like, this like almost like malty treacle kind of flavor to it. Other ones, like there's just another simple one that you could do at your restaurant in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver is, you know, everyone grills peppers, and we have the skins of the peppers. They usually just go into the garbage or the compost for that, but we'll take those and we'll infuse those in vinegars. And so when you're in January and you have you know, some fresh, beautiful cold water shellfish coming in the door, you can dress it with a little bit of vinegar that's been infused with these roasted peppers, and you have this like beautiful flavor of like this complexity of dishes that's not taxing on your labor or staff or time. It's just something that's just, it's working its magic while you're doing other things. We do the same with the insides of melons as well too, like cantaloupe. We take the melon guts, we call it, and just infuse that in vinegars, and then you have this like beautiful kind of that very
fermented
pungent melon flavor that you can use that in just a base vinaigrette for something, and it adds a different element that the guests can pick up on and they can't quite place it. It's one that we use for us as well too. One that we utilize in the garden as well too in that way is we'll use the wood from the prunings from our blackcurrant bushes, and we'll take the wood that has a really like beautiful like cassis blackcurrant flavor to it, and we'll use that and we'll steep it into creams, and it gives, we prune our blackcurrant bushes in April. There's no fruit coming in April. And so it allows us to use an ingredient that has this kind of fruit-forward flavor to it in an ice cream for our desserts, and meanwhile there's no fruit. It's a way of working seasonally, and it's something that we have to do anyways to promote more fruit growth in this summer, so it's a way that we can kind of work that way. Not everyone's going to be able to have blackcurrant wood in their pantry, but you know, it's one that we can do here. Or talk to a farmer that you see at a market that has blackcurrants or anything like that. What's some things that you have that you're just thrown away, or you're going to turn back into your soil, you're going to burn in a burn pile? That's the things that you can talk to, and they'll give it to you. Like we go to different farmers for fig leaves. The amount of farmers that, if you have figs, can I get your fig leaves? They're like, you want our fig leaves? Yes, I'll take all your fig leaves. and we use that for, you know, either wrapping fish or cooking them over the grill in that way, or blending into an oil or steeping into a cream or a custard. And it's a very kind of cool, almost like vanilla-like flavor that we can use here, where we don't have vanilla in Niagara. So
yes, no, there's definitely many ways. I mean, I actually used the abductor mussel from the scallop, and I marinated with some miso, let it ferment, dehydrate it, and I turn it into a salt. Yeah,
it's a beautiful, savory, like super umami hit, and the skirts as well too. We use those and make like a tea and sauce. Right now we're doing a cream that's blended with the coral from lobster, the green coral as well too. That's a little bit more popular in kind of French cooking, but it's one that sometimes goes into the bin when you're doing a large amount of lobsters for a restaurant. But it's like, that's something that you can just teach the cooks to save on to that, put it aside, and you can use it for something that's going to be really special for your guests, and it's going to expose them to a whole different ingredient.
So we're really going back to really one thing, whatever we talk about is creativity for sure, but it's also mainly technique. Really, the base of everything is like that technique on how to use things that we may think are garbage. There's so much things to do with them.
That and just making it a challenge for yourself. Just like, I'm not throwing, because the lobster shell is a lobster coral that costs the same price as the lobster meat that you're serving, and just using that as a jump off point of like a motivator, if anything. It's
and to boost the flavor
by a thousand
of the
cuts. You need to just kind of take away a bunch of different things, and it'll help you run a more sustainable business.
So what do we have to do as a community to connect the city cooks and chefs to our local farmers and growers? We talked a little bit on that. You said, you know, they can email you, like, because obviously there's on a website where we are all, you know, like, oh, this is where the farmers are, but you kind of mentioned it, like you have Instagram, there's where to connect it, but how can they easily find those farmers, you would say? Like, what do we have to do to kind of like implement that so it becomes pretty much you pick your phone and you have that? Like, should we create something?
There are great delivery services. Graze and Gather, which is based out of Prince Edward County. They deliver around, and they do working only with sustainable farms and especially organic. They deliver directly to us. That's where we get a lot of our bones for stocks, chicken bones as well too. And then also there's 100 Kilometer Foods, which is, I think delivers to most restaurants, or a lot of restaurants in Toronto as well too. They, just knowing what you're looking for, educating yourself on what is local, what is conventional, which is you're proud to stand behind on your menu, and sourcing those ingredients. Because if you start buying those ingredients and they see it, and businesses see a trend of like, oh, the cooks are only going to be, or chefs are only going to be buying these organic ingredients, they're gonna push them to source more of those ingredients and find more of those ingredients and make it easier for you to get them in the city. The other one is just, educating yourself, challenging. Like a lot of the farmers that we found here, like fully is just searching organic farms on Google, bringing maps to your area and driving, making the time to drive out there. Rent a car if you don't have a car and drive out there. Or if you can't do that, go to a farmer's market in Toronto. Toronto is blessed with a million people trying to sell great ingredients in that city. Go utilize that. Don't look to Japan, California, France. Look to what's in these markets. You'll be inspired. It's easy R&D. Because you'll be there talking and you'll taste something that's going to be better than something that sat on a plane for half of a planet to get to you. Like it's something it's just right there, and it's usually a subway or streetcar away, or making the trip out to somewhere that's going to be even more special. A lot of farmers try to choose the timing of the year. Maybe don't go out there mid-July to go visit them, but like downtime season, find time, they'll talk your ear off and you'll learn something, and you'll build a connection and a community in your workspace, which is awesome.
So before we wrap up, I have one more question, something that is a belief of mine, and you may agree or not. But I think until we change our guest culture when it comes to food, and we educate them as chefs on the importance of the sustainable and local eating, it's going to be difficult to change things drastically. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in a conversation like this, I feel like it's a lot easier to kind of have the explanation. Recognizing that some of your guests are just there for an anniversary, or just there for a birthday or a date night, and they don't need me on my soapbox beside them talking about sustainable farming. But the guests that, reading the guests, building that connection, visiting tables in your dining room, you can talk to guests about what they found were highlights of the meal, or things that they are going to ask you questions about. And if your service staff or yourself, or you're passionate about, like, hey, you got to try this dish, this is the one with the best corn I've ever had on it, they're going to talk to you about that, and it's going to build a conversation. And the thing for me is, like, we in the restaurant here, we farm to table is a little bit of a hokey statement, but if people can grab onto that, and it's something that they can identify with, and if it changes someone who dined at the restaurant here from going and buying, Chilean apples versus making a little bit of a trip out of their way to go buy apples from a farmer's market, or even just in the grocery store, simply just looking for the organic products or Canadian, it's going to create purchase trends that businesses are going to look at because they want to make money, and it's going to create more availability for that, and that's the biggest thing. And when you start to support and cook, and even at home finding these different ways, like like I was talking about Fandy Fish, they sell to the public. King Street Pantry, Pasture Butchery in the beaches of Toronto, they all sell to the public, and so you can go in there and source these ingredients, the same ones that the same farmers that we're working with in the restaurant, and cook at home with that. And it's probably going to be a better version than what you can find at the grocery store. And so, like, if that's just a little bit of a slight detour, or maybe a special meal on a Sunday night or whatever, date night at home, like, it's a nice way to just create a little bit more of a market for these businesses. And it does change the food culture. Think of back when I first started cooking, everything was either from Japan or the most exotic ingredients you could possibly source. Now I don't see that much. Yeah. Like, I guess I see things from like Hokkaido on a lot of menus in Toronto, but like there's a lot more kind of talking about local beef or local farming or local lambs, and the people that are behind that are great people to get to know as well too. So I think it's a very think it's something that we can all do a little bit more, or look to try to do a little bit more, or implement it into our daily schedule. And it's a good way to build that out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, again, being French and having lived in France, where all our menu are pretty much based on the supplier, where the supplier's name is on the menu, right? So we do create that connection. So you must know where the foods come from.
Well, the one when I was talking to, when we just did a collab dinner with Aburihana, Chef Ryusuke, when he won his Michelin-starred and went back to Japan and talked with some of the people that he was mentored by when he was young, the feedback was, why are you flying things from Japan when, you know, Japanese food in Japan is a local cuisine? When you're flying it over to Canada, why not find these ingredients and challenge yourself to create a Japanese influenced menu with using local ingredients? And so that's where his big kind of jumping off point for a new kind of outlook onto his menus has come from. And it's true, like in France, it's very much, you know, a lot of restaurants are kind of local cuisine.
Yeah.
Here, Canada's always trying to knock on the door of this international exposure, or why aren't we recognized like these other cuisines? And well, it's because we're not using anything local. We're not trying to do this other than, you know, your cedar plank salmon and poutine and stuff. But it's, you know, it's not the same as other regions, but we do have a bounty of ingredients here that people can tap into. It's just, it comes down to the chefs trying, and that's what, yeah, it's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you so much, Chef Eric. It was such a pleasure talking to you today. This was also a very insightful class on how to grow a sustainable garden, as well as building a menu around the terroir, unique flavors that are found in the wild here. And thank you to the Chef Canada community for tuning in today. If you want to be featured on the Chef Canada page, chat with me and run a Chef's Academy masterclass on a topic you specialized in. DM us, visit our website, and let us know. Chef Eric, it was a pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you very much.